This is Maurice Nicoll, December the 14th, 1946. Our Psychological Country. Someone said recently, "How is it that we can have the same experience?" I answered that when a person has the same experience as another person, it means that they have both been in the same part of psychological space. As this was not understood, I will try here to explain the idea further. It is well known that in respect to books having a mystical quality, as it is called, that is, containing bee influences, however ancient, we find many similar ideas and experiences. Historically speaking, in countries widely separated by space, by time, and by language, we find records exist that are similar in trend and are not simply concerned with matters of life. It might be said that most ancient manuscripts are of this kind. Whether this is so or not, it is not surprising if it is so, since all literature started from the conscious circle of humanity and, passing into the world, became bee influences. The reason for this is that the level of mechanical man is such that sea influences, or direct conscious teaching, cannot be grasped. So only a distortion of real teaching is possible in written form, and either or, yes or no, substituted for the new mind of third force that lies between the opposites, namely the mind that can think in terms of yes and no, and is not chained to the opposites of is it true? Or is it not true? The ordinary mind is, of course, formatory centre, which is third force blind, and only creates disturbances. In life, in physical space, we visit the same houses, the same places, provided we actually go to them, Paris, Brighton, and so on. It is the same with psychological space. But psychological space is not visited by the physical body, but by the mind, the emotions, and the sensations, that is, via the centres. This invisible world is as real as, and becomes far more real than, physical space. So I've taught you in Commentaries about the idea of you having a psychological country. Where are you now in that country? For although you're in the same place in a physical way, say in 5 Heathrow, Northwest 12 London, you can be in a vast number of different places in your psychological space, in your psychological country, and it is where you are in that psychological country that begins to matter so very much as you realize what the work teaches. The work is about your inwardness, where you are inwardly, namely in this great inner country onto which centres open. The work expresses this idea by speaking about centres and different parts of centres. For example, one may be in a wrong centre for the business in hand, or in a wrong part of a centre. It is your position in your psychological country that matters. One should ask oneself, where am I? And this question does not relate to outer sense-given space, but to that inner space of which only self-observation can make you conscious. It is in connection with this that the work teaches so much about that psychological position called the negative part of emotional centre. This inner psychological invisible country in which we really live our lives has good and bad places. It has in it heaven, hell, and an intermediate place. When we are in the negative part of emotional centre, we are, inwardly, in hell or at the mouth of hell. And if we identify, if we consent, if we make internal accounts, if we have no idea of cancelling them, and neither realise where we are internally, nor know what we have to do, namely, especially remember ourselves, then we have no second body, no inner intelligent sense of our direction in this inward spiritual world, and fall into every ditch, never understanding that the work is to teach us where we are internally. In these different localities in inward space, we will get what is there. For example, in slums we will be knocked on the head. One usually walks in unpleasant places and expects outer life to be nice and pleasant. How can this be? How can you expect things to improve if you are walking about all the labyrinths, the squalor, the vast dark city of the negative part of the emotional centre? Only by sincere self-confession, only by sincere self-observation, can you be aware of where you are dallying internally in your psychological world, your inner world, however you pretend with a bitter smile that you only have the best intentions. Then you lie, and your smile is tainted. Now, where you are in this inner psychological country is not necessarily due to you. Things turn. Life is a turning circle. The wheels turn like the Enneagram. Everything comes round again. But when you find yourself in a bad place and see where you are, through the development and inner light of real conscience, you only get out through valuation. The work, if valued, can get you out unharmed from many unpleasant places that you have to endure for a time. It is just like external life. If you value living in a pleasant place and happen to be in a bad place, you will tolerate your situation without identifying for a time, and you will not buy a house in the bad spot, but wait till you can get a better house. This is called not saying yes to your bad states. For remember, state psychologically is place physically. Every internal state is a place in the great psychological world of heaven and hell. Because this internal world exists, so can you be in the same part of it as someone else has been. So you have the same experience. And if you have been in a wonderful place in this inwardly touched world, so you can share your experience with another who also has been there and seen the same things. This is why there can be a similarity of experience.